Hashtag Trending would like to thank Meter for their support in bringing you this podcast. Meter delivers a complete networking stack, wired, wireless, and cellular in one integrated solution that's built for performance and scale. You can find them at meter.com/HTT. For the first time, I watched a video. Last name is McCoy. I can remember that because of the
Julie McCoy.
McCoy.
Yeah, and she uses an AI avatar that she calls Dr. McCoy.
Could you tell the difference between that and her?
Yes, but only partly because A, I know what she's doing, and B,
Did you catch that? He said, A, I know what she's doing?
Yes, that's true.
I know what she's...
Anyway, I know what she's doing there. But also, I am familiar with the model that she's using on HeyGen, because she's using HeyGen.
Yeah.
And there aren't a lot of hand movements. The hand movements are, because of the model she's using, the hand movements, when they are deployed, tend to be not quite repetitious, but they follow the same pattern from time to time. But yes, it's very good. It's actually quite good.
I can generally tell right off the top. I was 2 minutes into it before I went, something different here.
Yeah, and she's quite upfront about it.
Yeah.
She makes no bones about the fact that's what she does. So I admire that right out of the gate. And of course, she makes a point of saying, I write my own stuff, I do all my own stuff, but I have the avatar stand in for me.
Yeah.
And it's Julie McCoy?
Yeah.
I think that's the best example of a human avatar out there. There's another couple.
McCoy?
Yeah, McCoy, like as in Dr. McCoy. And she even riffs on that. She calls her avatar Dr. McCoy.
Yeah.
And sometimes wears a Starfleet uniform to drive the point home.
I skipped through the first part and then I was going back to reread to see that she actually does, in her notes at least, talk about this being her avatar or digital persona. But anyway, so not only is she, I think, the best avatar out there, but also the best explanation and the best idea of coming forward with the fact that she is working with an avatar.
Yeah, and that is one of the hints, because the better models, and HeyGen is, we're not promoting, unless of course HeyGen wants to sponsor this video.
We will not be bought, but we will take your money.
I've actually used HeyGen for quite a while. I don't use it a lot, but I do it every once in a while. Prior to Sora coming out, the video avatars were really good. And they have a relatively low-priced tier where you can make videos of any length, like up to 30 minutes long, which is pretty amazing. Actually.
Wow, actually.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I've used it a few times, is I wanted to do videos of a little bit more length to explain things to some of my customers and stuff like this. And I didn't want to spiffy myself up on camera and stuff like this, so I use the avatar. Anyway, the point being that it's easy enough to do that, but if you have piles of money, tons of dough, they have another level of avatar that is a lot more expressive, that isn't going to have any repetitive hand motions or stuff like that. It's actually exceptional, but you're going to burn through those credits quickly unless you're willing to put a lot of money up front. If I was a studio putting out videos for clients or products or whatever, hey, why not? It looks fantastic.
I want to experiment with it. I'm trying to figure this out because you talked about not spiffing yourself up.
Oh, by the way, this is an avatar. I'm not really here.
Oh, me too.
Kidding.
One guy said, "You're AI generated." I said, "I'd be better looking, buddy."
Well, when I generate myself as an avatar, I'm 25 pounds slimmer. Okay,
man. I
am buff. I am seriously buff when I generate myself as an avatar.
I have great hair, like really great hair.
You do not. Come on.
No, when I do an avatar.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just a little tweak. And yeah, I'm a little slimmer. Anyway, we have a show.
What are we talking about here?
We are going to do a show. I'm going to welcome everybody to Project Synapse.
It's awesome.
Oh, yeah, no, I think we will. But welcome to Project Synapse. If you're joining us, we normally start out being off topic and then desperately try to get back on topic. We are going to go on topic today. I pinged everybody, said, look, we got to cover Anthropic this week, because it's so easy to get sucked into talking about Google or OpenAI, and they make a lot of noise. But as I was saying, Amodai last week, for the past 2 weeks, has been swinging for the fences, and it's just home run after home run. Then, of course, he's talking at Davos too, so it's not like that people aren't paying attention to him. I think he's become an intelligent voice of the AI industry, and probably for good reason. But also, I think, looking at it, there's a strategy that Anthropic is playing, and it might be really good. And that is the thing, we all talked about this in business. What do they tell you? Don't be a master of everything. Focus on being the best in certain areas. And I don't think any company's done that in the what are we going to call it? The non-graphic area?
The best in everything, I think, is the thing. If you want to cover every single base, but they haven't done that. Now, part of it is they haven't had, I don't know where Anthropic would be if they had the massive funding that OpenAI had up front, or they had the pocketbook that Google has at its disposal. So I'm not sure that it was entirely a decision that was based on the idea of we're trying to build a product that's specific to these things, that excels at this, that has a very social aspect to it and so forth, if they'd had all of those resources at their disposal. And they just haven't. So they've been very careful about how they build their product. And I think part of that is the constraints that they have to work under. And without going down that road too far, the model that you're most likely to run into a wall on if you're trying to do some amount of coding or a lot of work or something like that is Anthropic's Claude. But it's the one most likely where you're going to hit something that says, I can't do that right now. Nobody else at a pro tier tells me that I've used up my credits halfway through a project.
I think that's a legitimate criticism. We need to separate out two things. One is, I don't think it matters why you adopted a strategy. Is it because you didn't have the resources? Fair. You just did a better job? Good for you. But I think there was a strategy, and the initial strategy was safety. And that was why Amodai walked out of OpenAI, said, I'm going to build a safe AI, and I have a real belief that AGI is coming and that an intelligent AI is coming. I think it's legitimate to say they have traded off at times for the fact that they need revenue or they need to keep moving. But I think they've done a really great job. And this week, one of the other things, and we'll come up to it as an idea, but the constitution that they came up with for AI this week says their strategy is still consistent. The fact that Amodai says that he thinks that AGI is going to be here in the next couple of years and that we need to be prepared for that. I think it's fair to say that he believes that currently AI has what you could describe in terms of a personality and even emotions. Not that they're human, but I think that you can build those constructs, and they've mapped those out very carefully. But before we get into the overall conceptual thing, I want to talk about just some of the things that they've done. You've been playing with the code more than anybody, Marcel, and I've been moving around with it as well, I'm trying to get into the cowork thing. I have done some coding, and I've told you my frustration was I was working with Google. It was really great, and I thought there was a lot of good stuff there. I learned a lot about a language I didn't know, and I spent a lot of time working on it, 4 hours. I cannot believe this. I spent a lot of time working on that, 4 hours, and I came up with a working system. Bugs were in it, but it was a working system. Then I went on to Claude and I said, can you just build this for me? And it went, sure. And it did. And as a matter of fact, I think you're the one who told me, Marcel, sometimes don't over direct them. What have you been playing? You've been playing with it. What's been your reaction?
Okay, first of all, I've been using coding agents a lot lately, and I'm doing it because I'm working with a client where changes happen rapidly and regularly, and to be able to deal with those changes, I use all the AI help I can get. It's either that or we work at the project for the next year. So you take advantage of the tools at your disposal. But aside from that, I've also decided that I would start playing, and I've been doing this, by the way, in the IDEs like Cursor and Anti-Gravity and stuff like this. And I stopped using Cursor, like I was paying the monthly plan on that one. And I stopped using it, and I started using Anti-Gravity when it came out. And honestly, I've been very happy with the way Anti-Gravity works. There are limitations that we can get into if you want. Everybody's been talking about using Claude Code, as in working down at the command line. And so I decided, just for the hell of it, I was going to undertake a really big project. And that was about a week ago now. And the really big project was that, are you familiar with applications like Super Whisper or Whisper Flow?
Yeah, you were talking, yes, but also because you were talking about them.
Right. Sorry. Whisper Flow and Super Whisper are like the two big apps that originally came out on Mac. I think Whisper Flow came out on Mac and Windows as well. Super Whisper just recently was released officially to Windows as well. And I've used all of these things, and I also used another one called Whisper Typing, which was available under Windows when there was nothing else available under Windows. And I've done workarounds for a long time. One of the things I did is I created myself a little GPT where where I basically said, look, just listen to what I say and reformat it completely in a perfect paragraph with bullet points and whatever else. And then I would copy paste. And that was my version of it for a long time until the Windows applications came out on the Windows side. The problem is that those things were never available over on Linux. And because of that, I decided, hey, what a perfect thing to try to do. These are complex applications. They need to be able to listen, format, and paste wherever it is you've got your key or wherever you've got your cursor focus. So if you put it in a field somewhere and you start talking, as soon as you stop talking, it formats and pastes all the stuff that you've done. Now, that uses a model called Whisper on the back end, which is by OpenAI. Now, this is a complex thing because it has to be able to live in the background on the computer that you're running on. And remember, I'm doing this in Linux where no such application exists. So here's the test. I downloaded code, I downloaded OpenAI's Codex, and I downloaded Gemini, all three of the big players, and I used their command line applications. To go into it with Claude, you just type CLOUDE, and that opens up code, and then you can start working with it. It's at the command line. We're not talking fancy GUI or anything. You're doing everything at the command line, and it uses this wonderful agentic workflow. It asks you questions as you go along. You direct it. It makes changes. It's really cool. And I recommend that anybody who's done any of this stuff try this command line version. I did the same thing with Codex. I did the same thing with Gemini. With Codex, you just type Codex. With Gemini, you just type Gemini at the command line, and boom, you go into this environment that you can customize and do some other wonderful things with it. So you wind up wrapping your head around a different way of doing things because it doesn't act like a chatbot. It acts like a coding assistant. No fancy bells and whistles. It's just you sitting down and working with this thing. And it's quite fascinating. So anyway, here's what I wanted to do. I wanted to create an app that sat in the background, that launched itself down into the taskbar. So it's just a little taskbar icon, had a little pop-up that would indicate when you were talking so that you knew that there was something happening because Whisper listens, formats, and then puts this stuff out. Allows you to change to different models, allows you to use different AI backends, like all sorts of things like this. And I threw it at each one of these models, and after running for a long time, by the way, so all three of these guys went through and took, 30, 35 minutes, to come up with this thing. A long time in the AI world. And Claude gave me the first, what I would call minimum viable product. It actually made the little icon, not just a system tray that showed me that it was working, but a system tray with a pop-up menu that allowed me to modify things. I was so excited by how much of my requirements it met out of the gate. And I'm going to come clean here. The requirements that I used is I went into ChatGPT. I said, go to these different sites, go to Super Whisper, go to Whisper Flow and so forth. Read what their products do, create me a combined product specifications. And that's what I threw into code, into OpenAI Codex and into Gemini CLI. That's what I used as my starting point. And the one that came through the most was Claude. Now, and I'm gonna shut up here for a second, but this is where I learned about the fact that it's easy to burn through your 5 hours worth of allotted credits on Anthropic's AI. The other guys just kept on chugging as long as I wanted to. There was no issue with my $20 a month, but not Claude. Claude is, I'm sorry, Dave, I can't do that. I will reset the numbers for you at 2:00 this afternoon. It's only 11 a.m. Well, I got to wait 3 hours to get back into this? Anyway.
And you're paying.
Yes, I'm paying.
Because I have a similar experience. Yeah.
But I think part of that is because that they don't have the deep pockets and so on that the other players do.
I think it's their business model. And this is what we can talk about their business model.
That's true.
They're selling an API. They're not, whether you go into Claude with Cursor or whether you come into it from Gemini, however you come into Claude, they don't care. They're not, although their front end is marvelous, and I think it's wonderful. We could talk about that too. Model Control Protocol? Is that it? Yeah. MCP.
Yes.
I always forget what it is. But all the connectors, which is essentially all of the connectors that you need to connect to anything else. Open source it, give it out to everybody. They want to encourage people to use paid Claude services. And when you think about it, how much you paying? Seriously though, Marcel?
I forget whether it's $20 or $25 US a month. Use the service.
But how much?
But I also do that with OpenAI, and I also do that.
But if Claude came to you and pinged you, because I've got another one of the video editor I use has gone to an AI model. It's quite handy, and I had the pre-release for ages and was just paying my regular, I think $35 a month or something like that. I was using it, and then all of a sudden they came along and said, "You're on a credit model now, so if you want to do this, it's going to cost you 10 credits." And I looked at it and go, "What is it? Another $10 a month?" And I'm not made of money. Most of our site exists on donations, but
for the record, John and I do not get paid for this.
So we're not making money with this site.
We're not. This is a labor of love, Jim. For the three of us, it's a labor of love.
Of Gagne and Pinard too. But the
very witty, Wild. Very witty.
Yeah, I've had a whole lifetime to practice with those lines. But the idea is that that when you look at it, you say, if I need somebody to do the site or something like that, good. Here's the news, guys. I'm not maintaining the websites. I'm just not doing that. And so even if I use a contractor that's relatively cheap, you're blowing $60 to $100 an hour to get somebody to work on and do this work for you. And that's, so you look at it and you say, but Claude could do that. Yeah.
And I have to admit, as well as this worked, I'm pretty sure that I'm tempted to actually pay for the max on one of these, to pay up a level on all of these products. And I haven't done it yet, and I've been saying it for months. But I was looking at the $100 a month on Claude going,
Well, and I was going to say, though, that to me, the frustrating thing would be that if you're paying $20 or $25 a month US for Claude, and then to have it come back going, oh, you're out of credits, you need to pay for more credits.
Now, to me,
fair,
that would be frustrating. It resets every 5 hours. If you're in the middle of doing some work, that can be exceedingly frustrating.
Yeah.
Can I end my screen just for a second?
Sure.
Yeah. Finish up, John, and then I'll set up the screen here. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, it will limit you. Like you said, you're right in the middle of something and it says, sorry, you got to wait 5 hours. But if you have the ability to say, I'll pay the $100 a month and get unlimited where it doesn't block me like that. We had this conversation when OpenAI first came out with their $200 a month plan, right? Yes, who the hell's going to pay for that? But then you go, if you look at what you're getting for it and the fact that you're essentially eliminating a body to do that, it makes some sense.
But this is what we have to understand.
Sorry, go ahead, Jim.
We have to understand the business models. And that's what I think the light went on for me. Anthropic is not selling to retail people. They will, but they're the retail guy who wants to pay $20 a month and have an AI. They're making money selling to people who do use this for a living or for commercial purposes or APIs, where they're used to paying based on usage fees. And don't forget, the idea of usage fees is not a bad idea. It's been around for a long time. If you're going to use a lot of the machine time, you're going to pay. AWS will do that too.
They're all going that way.
So there's a different model.
I think that the fact is, I would have paid, if I ran across something I couldn't do, I would hire a programmer. Okay. I would pay, let's pretend that I was paying him $75 an hour. Okay. To fix something, to do something that I wasn't capable of doing because I didn't have the knowledge. And then I'd wind up spending, let's call it $300, but I'd spend $300 and I would think it was money well spent.
Yeah.
Because I was able to continue and work on a project and maintain a customer relationship that I would not have been able to maintain because I didn't have the skills or I didn't have the knowledge in that particular area. And all I had to do was spend $300 and I thought it was cheap. And now, and this is crazy. And I think a big part of it is Because those of us who have grown up on the internet, including the people who were born with the internet already existing, have gotten used to the idea of getting so much for effectively nothing.
Yep.
Okay. We balk at the fact that there are ads on YouTube when you're watching it free. It's, oh, I get to watch this free, but I have to pay. I have to watch these non-skippable ads. It's for God's sakes, man, you're getting all this stuff for free. You're bitching about the fact that you have to spend 2 minutes watching a couple of commercials every hour. Anyway, the point being that because we've gotten so used to the idea of this stuff being so cheap or free, the idea of spending $100 a month for access to these superpowers. So that's $100. It's $100 US too. It's $30. That's a lot of money, man. but I would have paid it without a second thought a few years ago. I'm going to quickly share my screen and I'll explain it to the people who are listening to this as opposed to watching it. Okay, so I posted this in our private Discord server for the three of us here. So this is where I'm going at the moment. Can you see my screen there?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So what I've got on the screen here, this is code running, generating the project that I'm doing. And of course, down there, you can see like the number of credits that I'm using and the model that I'm running at 4.5 Opus. And over here, that was Gemini. And I did the same summary of what I was doing with Gemini. But the thing that they generated, the thing that excited me so much, and none of the other things did this out of the part, like they all created something that quasi worked. But then Claude went and did stuff like this. The tray because I said I wanted a tray that showed me that the product was active. Claude came up and did this. It created, and I had asked for it. I said it would be nice. It took would be nice as yes, we're just going to go ahead and do this. And if you take a look at this, there is a settings window that pops up that lets me decide what microphone I want to be able to use for the system, what language I want it to listen in, which model I'm going to use. So I can actually use it gave me the option of not just a local model. Now I am using the local model. I've got a PC that's strong enough to be able to do that. But it gave me the option of a local model, or I could click on it and it would let me use an API through one of the big providers like OpenAI or Gemini. There are a lot of open source models out there. Each one is progressively bigger. There are 5 big ones and they're progressively bigger. I took the medium one, which is high accuracy, which is wonderful for whatever it is I might actually want it to do. And that was part of what it did. And then it goes further. Now, this is really interesting. Again, this is using code. And I was blown away by this. Look at this thing. It's actually beautiful. You've got nice looking menus and windows. There's the create mode where I can create additional modes of how it listens. Convert transcription into organized bullet points. Short casual messages cleaned up for chat or SMS. Adaptive mode that intelligently formats based on content. Simple voice transcription without AI processing. In other words, like local stuff. A history where I can take a look at all of the things that I've said before. It maintains a history of all of the voice to text stuff that I've done. This is beautiful. And it gave me the option for these things, like the modes. And then
just to go through,
yep.
Just for the people who are listening, you did this in basically character in a terminal mode type of situation?
Yes.
But did you just ask it in terminal mode, human question?
Yes.
And then it started.
Now, I gave it detailed instructions. And remember what I said. I started explaining this by saying that I went to the sites of all of these products that I've already used. Whisper Typing, Whisper Flow,
Yep.
Super Whisper. I said, go look at all of these, combine these ideas into instructions that I would feed to an AI development platform like Cursor or Anti-Gravity. I said instructions that I would feed to this IDE to create this product. And so it basically went out and took a look at what all these things did, and it mashed it all into one thing and said, you know what? These are the things that I think would be nice. When I did it with the other two, they gave me a product that worked, okay? But nobody actually did it perfectly out of the gate, okay? There were a couple of problems that would say, I'm having issues starting this. I need to have this installed. Can you install this package for me? Let me install the package. I always went ahead and installed it. This was not like terrifying work for somebody who's ever worked at this even a little bit, okay? But what Claude did with which on the screen here, with these beautiful graphical boxes and so forth, was way beyond what the other two did.
Yeah.
And using exactly, and I want to be clear here, exactly the same instructions. I did not modify what I was doing for any of them. This is the same thing, okay? Above and beyond here. Now, the other thing, I'm gonna wrap it up with this. For anybody who is watching, you'll be able to see this, but this is the tray icon that comes up. There's a little green square down there. Okay. I can specify the hotkey, by the way. I chose Control Spacebar to start listening. Okay. Control Spacebar to stop listening. So it's on off. And you'll notice that there's a mode: voice to text, notes, messages, emails, meetings. It'll record meetings for me. Okay. Transcribe a file, so I can actually input a file and it will transcribe it for me. The history, obviously, are all the things that have been copied to the clipboard. I can take a look at the history. So it's maintaining a local database of all the things that are there. Obviously, to bring up the settings app to quit. And after, and again, like there were maybe probably a half a dozen iterations that I went through before I got all of the things that, and what was wonderful is every time I saw that it could do something, it made me want to push it just a little bit further. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So the icon at the bottom, the little green square that is down there that's saying "I'm always ready for you," turns red when you hit the hotkey. Okay, red is in. You remember you've been in a recording studio, Jim, so you can appreciate this. The red light comes on. We're live, right?
Yep.
So I was using that same sort of symbolic return. We're live at the moment. We're recording stuff. And what happens with this is it goes red, but then as you talk, it flashes green, red, blue, stuff like this, so that you can see that it's actually hearing your voice. So there's actually this feedback. It's not haptic, because haptic, you'd feel it, but it's a visual feedback to let you know that it's listening and it's processing the information. Anyway, this has been amazing. And the most amazing thing for me is that this is a full-blown product that works on Linux that does not exist on Linux. No one has this product. I do, but no one else has it.
This is what I mean
for 3 or 4 days.
And I'm not saying that others aren't doing it, but this is what I'm continually hearing about, particularly about Opus 4.5. And Anthropic is making the claims. Dario Mota was on, I watch him being interviewed all the time, saying that 90% of their code is generated by Anthropic or by Claude. And now some engineers aren't claim they're generating no code. They're only structuring and working with this. And this comes to remember this idea of being able to generate code for real projects and do it effectively, because that has a big part of how we move AI forward. I just want to put a bookmark on that. We will come back to that. I want to go back to another example that I found, and that was this computer engineer. I think he's from Australia. He created a vibe code operating system from scratch for a Raspberry
Vibe OS, it's called.
Now,
and it boots up on hardware. Now, he used virtual hardware. He used QEMU, but QEMU is used to virtualize systems all the time.
Yeah, but this isn't your cuddly stuff. This isn't build me a little website and all that sort of stuff. This is serious programming. This man is not a programmer. He said he's a very bright student, a university student, did not know any programming, built an entire OS. Now, as I pointed out to John when I was talking about them, I wouldn't test its security. But, and the story I did on this, I said, it's like that old joke about the Russian bear. Guy comes up to this guy, he's got a dancing bear, and he says, that bear doesn't dance well. So the point isn't that the bear dances well, it's that the bear dances at all. And this is what I mean. You can write the code for an operating system, which if anybody's ever worked at this level, I worked with guys who did. And if you've ever been one of those people that people bounce ideas off of, and you're sitting there and your mind is just stretched by how this thing works, and you're going back through every piece of math you can remember, that's what happens at the OS level. So they've created tools that are now at the point where I don't think we can deny that we can generate code.
Last week, Anthropic released something called cowork. And cowork is like a graphical version and graphical terminal type graphics. So it's not a slick, super graphical application. But the point that they made with that one is the entire thing was vibe coded in less than 2 weeks. So they released an application that was entirely created.
Think about this. They created an application with their own tools. When we get down to what they're doing with programming, they're executing tasks where the machine acts independently for long periods of time. That's the benefit of it. If you have to jump into it every 2 minutes and direct it, correct it, and it's constantly stopping on you, it's an interesting tool, but is it a productivity tool? But if you can give it the specs, as you said, and it comes back to you, even with errors in that interface, and it goes away for these long periods of time, 35 minutes or whatever. But even if there were errors in that, Marcel, have you ever done a project for a client and you just came in and they said, thank you? Has anybody ever done that first run through, get bug-free software, said you can install it?
All the time.
But what you've got there is a workable, solid product. And I was listening to a YouTube video from somebody because I'm checking it out. I'll give you my example right now. We talked about this last week. I hate proofreading. I just hate it. I do not want to proofread my own novel 6 times. And I could afford a proofreader, I guess. But if you write a novel and you're typing madly, you make a lot of typing mistakes. They're easy. Find them with spell check. But whether you put 2 or 3 dots in a sentence as the proper way to space a sentence, whether you have a comma at the right point before do you use a comma or do you use a period before the quotation marks? Have I introduced a space here or there?
Yeah.
Really matters when
Comma goes before the quotation mark at the end. Right?
Exactly.
Just to be clear.
No, but how many people know that? It's not hard. You can do all of this stuff, even if you don't remember the rules. You can go on to the internet, AI, whatever, say, spit up the list of rules. Now, do I really want to go sentence by sentence by sentence by sentence by sentence? You guys know me. I've got ADHD already. Getting to do the second round of this book. I just want to write the book, finish it, and say it's published. I actually have to go for a second and then a third round. I do not want to do this. Anyway, but I've got on the new book like 350 pages. I tried to run it through all various AIs. Took ChatGPT, gave it the instructions. It would take so much, maybe a paragraph, because I didn't want to break it down chapter by chapter, because there's other things you want to do. I want to make sure that I've got name consistency, that I haven't spelt the person's name wrong in 2 different places, that I haven't shifted the name of somebody, all the other mechanical things you can do. So I want it to absorb the entire manuscript, which is where I gave up last time. But I thought things have really progressed. So I put it into, I took it because it was a Google Doc. I put it into a Google Doc and I went through and gave it to Gemini to do. And Gemini would actually read the whole thing in and give me an arc of the story and a few things like that. Same thing, 1 chapter and it stops. I put it into Claude. It put it together. And I think I really think I've stumbled into the cowork piece. It said, let's break this chapter by chapter. I'll read it all. Break it chapter by chapter and I'll work through them one by one. So it told me how to structure my work so that it could do the task, keep consistent, and bring it in chapter by chapter and process them one by one.
Okay, I'm going to stop you for a second because I think that one of the things that everybody who tries to do something like this needs to understand is that opening up a chat window and putting this stuff in there and working with that is the wrong approach. Okay? What you want to do in ChatGPT, in Claude, is you want to open up a project. You want to open up a special project where the document that you're doing, you don't paste a document, you don't upload your manuscript into. What you do is you open up a project and you make that the reference for everything that you do inside the project. Makes a huge difference. I know what you're talking about. What you're talking about is I threw my thing into a prompt at the file. Claude is probably doing some magic in the background where it says, this is a really big thing. I'm going to break it down into effectively a project and work with it that way. I expect that if I give you something, you're going to be able to reference the whole thing. But I ran into this quite a long time ago, and I found that if you actually build these things as projects with those files, even a huge file as a reference document in a project, the results are completely different, night and day.
Totally agree with you. And that's the type of thing that you should learn. And if I had only one tool set in front of me, I should have sat there and thought it through, because I use projects all the time for scripts and things like that to keep consistency of different things.
Yes. And within that conversation.
What I'm pointing out is I took this thing, dumped it in, and Claude structured for me how to work it. And that's
in the same
so
way that it figured out all these
the
other things for
problem
me, right?
instead of coming back to me and saying, "Don't you know how to solve this problem properly for me?" And that, to me, indicates that they've got the ability to tackle the things that we might encounter and be able to work through those itself. And so going back to cowork, I was talking to this guy, or was watching a YouTube video, and I watched it. Person has a library of documents they want organized, all of these things, gave Claude the task of organizing his entire library, and went to sleep, got up the next morning, found his library fully organized. And so it had worked through. Now, probably it's not working through the night. Let's say it's working for an hour or two without direction and finding solutions to things that might otherwise stop.
John, at this point, is going to have to jump in and tell us why this is exceedingly dangerous.
Yeah. And I guess my take on this is anytime you just let the tool go and run rampant with all of your information is at least somewhat frightening. One of the things that I like about, the only thing I like these days about Copilot in our organization is that it's got the guardrails. It's got the private tenant, so the data stays within our environment. But with ChatGPT, you have to tell it, don't train the model. With Gemini, if you want to keep your history, you have no choice but to let it train the model with your data.
Right.
I don't know about Claude. That's one of the things that I need to look into. But that would be something that's of concern, is that if you've now said to Claude, go out and reorganize my whole library, you're saying, go read everything that's in here and figure out what you want to do with it. And where does that reside? And one of the things to just tie in with that, Marcel, when you were talking about the coding that you've done, one of the things that I haven't done a lot of coding with AI, but one of the things that always concerns me is A, where does the application reside? And B, where does the data reside that's being used within that application? Because so I'll talk about where I work now. We're a financial institution. We have members' financial data, and it has to be held in a secure fashion that you can't just go, oh yeah, it's in Claude. So those are some of the things that I think people need to consider before. It's great if you want to go and play with these things to do some coding and that. And if you've got things that aren't, where the data is not sensitive, go crazy. But I think before you start using it for anything that has personally identifiable information or company confidential information, you need to make sure you know exactly where it's residing and who has access to that information.
The thing that you just mentioned about whether you're able to actually share these things, I'm going to take a look and see what Claude actually does in terms of being able to opt out of training. But I will tell you that if you're using the command line tool for coding, what you will do up front, and with all of the three that I tried, it will ask you whether you allow it to work and do things inside the folder where you are at the moment. Okay. Some of the things that I've heard about, it destroyed everything on my system. You would have had to tell it that you had access to the entire drive, which would be like insane out of the gate. But it will right up front say, do you give me permission to work and write and create files inside this folder? So what I'd like to think, and again, I'm going to have to look this up, but what I'd like to think is when I'm doing it that way and I'm giving it permissions to work inside that folder, that's where everything lives and that nothing comes out of that folder. The other thing too is when you're doing coding stuff like that, it's not like a chat session, okay? You're not having a chat with the AI the way that you do through the web interface or through your app or something like that. You're in a very specialized environment that understands the environment that it's working in.
But
that gets treated
but
differently.
There's with it. We are now at a point where we're asking and talking about the right questions. That is, what is the architecture of this? Where is the code? All of the things that we need to understand for development. And I don't think Anthropic is perfect on these. Like I said, we did a story last week about the failures of its MCP server in terms of security. They were hit with prompt injections. There were at least 3 big CVE last week, which were they would have a high impact. And when I was reading through these, I went, how the hell did this happen? And I read a sentence from something that I think came out of Anthropic. It says, Anthropic is presuming you're providing the security for MCP. In other words, it's presuming it's housed within an environment and you are properly allowing what comes in and what can't come in. And this is, so we're now starting to ask the same intelligent questions that we were asking about different tools a while ago. And I'll use my famous comparison, which is everybody sitting there going, AWS, rock solid, secure. They have engineers there that know way more than anybody else about security. Did they tell you that you're supposed to secure these buckets yourself where you store your data?
Yep.
No. Did they tell you they default to being open? No. You have, or if you install Microsoft, any of the Microsoft products in your environment, you have to actually read and figure out where your security pieces are. So I think there's a new, and God, yeah, as if you needed more work, John, but there is a developmental security aspect that is going to have to be integrated. I did a show last week with this woman, wonderful woman. She hacks purple is her code name, Tanya Janka. And Tanya said that she's built checklists and things, and security for making secure code isn't that hard. It's just making sure that people are paying attention to the right things as they develop. Yep. We're going to have that same approach for AI.
And I think that's one of the things that people haven't thought about up until now with AI, right? Is there's this new tool that does all kinds of cool things. It'll write code for me. It'll write a book for me, all this other stuff. But now people are starting to go, hang on a second, where's it getting this information and what's it doing with the information and all of this, even simple things that we talked about, whether it's training their models and so forth. One of the things I like about ChatGPT is I can have it retain my history without it training the model with my information. The one thing I don't like about Gemini is if you want to maintain your historical chats, you have no choice but to let it train the model. To me, those are completely different issues that you should be able to deal with them separately.
Yep.
So Anthropic, I'll answer the question on Anthropic, whether they do this or not, okay?
Yes.
And for anybody who's watching this at the moment, let me just show you what the privacy screen looks like. So if you go into your settings on Claude, you can see here, learn how information is protected using Anthropic products and visit our privacy. But here's the big thing, okay? First of all, you can always export your data from these models. People should know this. The relevant things from your chats and so forth. You should know this because if you actually wanted to move to a different model, you can actually export information from past chats to then build up a history on a new model.
Can you do that with ChatGPT as well, Marcel?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll create a JSON file for you. You can actually ask it to create a summary of all of your relevant conversations so that it understands those sorts of things that you'll want to bring to another model for memory. But anyway, look down here. This is the important part here. Location metadata. Do I want Claude to be able to pick up where I live in order to be able to answer relevant questions, about, I don't know, if I'm looking for a restaurant that's near me or the perfect cupcake for a party and stuff like that. It helps if it knows that you're living in that city versus some other part of the country. But the bottom line is the one down here at the bottom, help improve Claude. And here's what it says. Allow the use of your chats and coding sessions to train and improve Anthropic AI models. And if you want, unlike Gemini and ChatGPT, you can turn that off. And I have never really thought about this before today, John. I know you're horrified, but I never thought to take a look at it here. I knew that I couldn't turn it off in Gemini because I pointed it out to you, but it never occurred to me to look for it here either. So there you go. That's the answer to that question.
Yep.
But again, that's one level of this. The whole idea of whether my code is secure, the whole idea of whether I'm keeping a secure development environment, the whole idea of you're communicating that with JSON, but is that encrypted when it moves around? These are the questions, like I said, these are the serious questions that people need to be asking now. That's why I keep banging my head against the wall and saying, for God's sakes, set up a development environment to do a project, make it 10% of your team's time, but have them do something that is fun, may be useful, but will help them build and understand the elements that they're playing with. Because we are now there. When Anthropic is telling me that 90% of the code can be generated for their engineer level. If somebody telling me that they can build an operating system out of this, I'm sorry. And if you're smarter than me, you can send me notes and tell me how dumb I am. I'm going to tell you the coding part of it's been cracked. When it can work for 6 to 8 hours straight without intervention and come up with meaningful results, we are at least close to being able to automate the transaction. And this is where I think part of Anthropic's genius is. Now taking this to making a working product for people, this cowork, is that what they call it? Yeah. And
cowork,
yeah. And now to be able to export that same idea to somebody who wants to not just use a chatbot, be able to not have to sit and figure out how the chatbot works, be able to say, I need you to do this task. And I've been through this because I work a lot of stuff in Gemini and ChatGPT where I would really just like it to take a script and put it into a format and check these things and get it ready for me. I don't want to do it with most of the chatbots because I will tell you right now, even ChatGPT and Gemini, if I ask it to do the same task twice, it does it differently.
Yep.
So I've got projects myself.
The generative part of generative AI, isn't it? Yeah.
So to be able to construct and build your rules and come back with doing the same thing twice is part of cowork will not be successful if it does that. And I can't count the number of times now that I'm sitting back and going, you did this last week without any problem. Why can't you do it this week? And that's the growing pains of generative AI. So if they apply the same logic to cowork so that it will actually do the same thing and be able to execute these steps each time, they're going to have a real working assistant on their hands.
But Jim, let's take that.
You want to close.
I was just going to say, take that thought about you ask it to do the same thing twice and you get two different answers. Take that plus the whole security concern, and then you get into companies like, and this is in no way saying anything negative about them, I'm just picking them randomly, but some of the big players, Salesforce, SAP, right? These guys are AI, they're AI enabling their systems. So does that mean that if you're using AI within SAP, if you ask it to analyze your data twice, are you going to get two different answers out of it? And so if that's the case, is it really beneficial? But if it comes out with two completely different answers, that's potentially
but there's a difference between the answer and how I deliver the answer.
Yeah. No. For instance, I did my expenses spreadsheet for my account. I've got a project for it in ChatGPT. I say, I want you to scan my credit card invoice. You know by now what the various categories are. I want you to spit out an Excel spreadsheet for the accountant. 3 months go by. I do that each month. Last month, it stopped. It did it totally differently. Why? I don't know. So the inability to execute that task, I'm not saying it will give me the wrong answer. I'm just saying it didn't do the job that it used to do. Yeah. And I see that all the time with simple things like scripts, because I have a script format and I'd really like it if it put my scripts for the podcasts, just space them out for me, do the font for me, put the same intro I use all the time here, do these things and organize it so I just can push a button and I'll have a readable script and I don't have to go through and format everything. One time or the project, it'll do that for 6 weeks. Then all of a sudden I get a totally different format for my script. It's decided there's a better way to do it. And that reliability is going to be a piece of this. And we talked about Salesforce, Mark Benioff, and this is where people go crazy. That's where we're going to hit a lot of walls. Benioff, remember, I think it was 2 months ago, I'm going to get rid of 4,000 people because I got AI. They're silently hiring those people back.
Yes.
Why?
A lot of companies are doing that.
They didn't think about the processes that they were automating. They didn't think about how that fit in their company. And this is the number one problem we're going to have with the greater capacity. Because when it was just a chat bot, and you could ask it questions, you could ask it to do simple things, who cares? You have a little problem with it. But if you're going to actually put this in to be a worker and automate the work steps that somebody is doing, or a substantial amount of them, even with supervision, you're going to have to be able to do this in a mechanical way. And this is why I'm bullish on Anthropic. And this will bring me around to where I think they've got work to do on security. I think they know they do.
Yep.
They've got work to do on reliability, but they have done more research, and they came up with something. I don't know if this is what I mean. They came up with a thing called the Constitution. For Claude. And the Constitution for Claude has a number of key elements in it. And one is that it understands, and it's not a constitution that it gives to its clients about how that's going to be safe and how it's going to work and how it's going to be reliable. It's the Constitution is for Claude. And they've done this before. They're the first company that gave out their master prompt. They've done this before, and I think it's brilliant. Put that out in the world so that people like Marcel, who've got all this time on their hands, will read it and come back to you and say, this is wrong. No, but I'm just kidding. It is that open source thing.
I know.
Put it out in the world and you'll get a lot of criticism. And that's a good thing. But they've got this Constitution now, and it's set up. It understands the training level because, and I don't think people realize this, we don't construct generative AI. We grow it. You can't, There's certain foundational things you can't lose. We get obsessed by the early pieces of it being a predictor of words. And that was an early part of the construction. And we're way beyond that now. But we grow an AI. First, it takes in all the information. Next, we put it through a process where we try and give it some ideas of how it can structure. And then we do the fine tuning. Anthropic has taken this and said, we understand this. The cool part of this is they've started to say, we have to treat this like a person, whether it's a person or not, that we have to treat it like a person. And we're going to attack that at that level. I haven't seen any of the other AI companies talking about this. Maybe they just don't talk, but I haven't seen them dealing with this, because if you have a behavioral piece of software, a generative piece of software, how you make it reliable is not by telling it to be reliable. And it's just like that whole thing you've heard me rabbit on them. You don't make it secure by telling it what not to do. You actually have to intercede with its development and help it understand how it makes decisions. Here's a case in point. I don't urge everybody to read this Constitution, but to understand what the thought they've put into it. It maps out the various levels of personalities that could evolve. The critic. These are various types of personalities. When do I want them to surface? And it's a long piece of working this. The second piece that they look at is they start to talk about what behaviors we want. Here's a good example. This is a really good example. How do you make sure that the AI stops doing that thing that we hate and love, and that it's very confident but wrong? You don't just tell it, don't be very confident but wrong. You actually have to intercede at various points and deal with these personalities. And one of the things is, it said, and I was reading this, I got caught on this one. I was reading it, it says, you've got to take into account all of the various things that specialists and experts have written and said about this topic. And then, if you read it deeply, it says, and question it. And I went,
okay,
but that's a thought process that you have to work through.
How is this any different than raising a child? Right? Tell them what to think. You tell them how to think, how to go about their own reasoning and so forth, but doing it in the proper way that's acceptable.
Yeah, but then your child is not necessarily going to follow what you said anyway. I mean, there's plenty of research that shows that most of the influence on how your child develops is their peer group, not you, no matter how good a parent you are.
Yep.
Just so, because again, like we mentioned, it is pages and pages and pages.
The audience will thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so the difference, the reason Anthropic's constitutional AI is different is it's set up as a set of guiding principles that the code references whenever it does an answer. So unlike other systems, the model follows this written constitution, which can be thought of as a high level set of principles that the AI is supposed to follow. And that is used to, when it generates a response, it critiques its own response before it puts that out to the person who's sitting in front of the keyboard. Okay. So it's a self referential critique. In other words, unlike other models who set up guardrails, so they put the models and they have guardrails that say you're allowed to talk about this, you're not allowed to talk about this, or whatever. Every single one of Claude's responses has to reference back to this constitution, to this set of guiding principles. So it's a feedback loop that instead of relying entirely on a whole bunch of human generated safety data, which is typically how this stuff is done in the past. It's here are all the bad things in the world. Here are all the good things in the world. Here are the guardrails that specify what you can and can't do. You have the set of guiding principles. And in that respect, I suppose that was the whole no politics before it was abandoned. You create a constitution as exactly that, a set of guiding principles as opposed to laws that you must follow.
Yeah.
Does that make more sense when you do it that way?
It does, but it's the depth that they've taken this to.
It's a conscience.
Yeah, they're treating it like, this is what they're saying, that they are treating it, and it may have a functional personality, and that's why you're not totally off, John. It's just, I'm not sure that we all raise our children well, we know how to do it, but it is a developing intelligence, and it may have a functional representation of things that we think of like emotions. And when you think about emotions are what regulate our behavior on a macro level. I want to do this. I want to feel this way. So it's dealing with things at that level. So a state that we want to pursue. Yeah. They've taken it to a depth that there's something in the Constitution that says don't exploit psychological weaknesses. And that's part of what they've embedded in there. God knows that's what these AIs have needed. I'm just saying they're thinking at a level of depth with their researchers that I have not seen evidence of anywhere else. And they've found ways that by anticipating that Omoda, I can never remember his sister's name, but they've come out and said they think that they have a level of AGI happening. They think that they've got that level happening and they have to manage it at that level. Now, the next piece that they put in, they have tools that watch the model and figure out when it's behaving in a certain way, what parts of it are activated. Where have we seen that before? In human intelligence, it's how we know how various parts of the brain work. And they're actually monitored. They've got tools to do that. It's called activation mapping. Out there.
I had ChatGPT summarize it for me.
And there's nothing wrong with that. But I've actually been trying to, I haven't dove into it to
by the way,
extent.
it's Daniela.
Dario's sister. Daniela was talking about the fact that they believe that there is a level of something, and they're not saying it's conscious like a person or anything, but there's a level of consciousness and learning happening within the models. And when we appreciate them at that level, we can start to do the depth of work that will give us the basis of being able to control these things. Because when you grow things, that's what they're saying, is that AI is evolving and we have to understand it at that level.
And but I don't know that you guys are conscious. I assume that I know I'm conscious. I assume that you guys are conscious, but I have no way to really know that. Here's a fun fact for the people who are out there listening to this at the moment, who watch us on YouTube and so forth. Have the three of us ever been in the same room together? No, never. In all the time that we've been doing this, in all the time that we hung out here together, that we chat online, the three of us have never been in the same room. So how do I even know that you guys exist beyond this experience here? I don't know that for a fact any more than I know whether Claude is conscious.
He's on to us. Just, Jim, one thing I wanted to say about Claude is that with all the stuff that I've read lately and everything, I mean, we've talked for a long time about move fast and break things, right? And that's the motto of all of these big players. But one of the things that I really like about Anthropic is, and I refer to it as, they seem to have a conscience of let's do it right the first time. We know we're going to make mistakes. We'll have to go back and fix those, but let's do the best we can. And in this article I was talking about, or that you had shared with us about Anthropic teaching Claude to be good, they talk about that constitution as its soul.
Yeah.
They talk about it as the soul document, which I think that summarizes what their philosophy is of how they're training their model. And it gives me hope that, because they're talking about training the systems to reason about values and judgment.
Yeah. And if you look at it, Amodai was on at Davos and criticizing a big investor and big supplier from NVIDIA.
NVIDIA.
Like, I think they have
something.
And if you look at their team, I don't think they've had any enormous turnover on their team. They also had no enormous scandals out of their team.
Fly under the radar.
This is what I mean. So let me take a next leap with you and say a company that has learned that 100% of its code can be generated by its AI, a company that has learned how to create the personality of a superior intelligence, artificial intelligence. I think Marcel calls it synthetic intelligence. And I think but I think we're closer to that. So a synthetic intelligence. And once they get to that point, and there is that book, If Anyone Builds It, Everyone Dies. And they talk about the same thing. You can talk about the flywheel in business where you get up to a certain speed and things happen. You get to the point where you can generate your code for the next generation of AI, and you figured out how you're going to help it mature, and you can do that, you might accelerate your move to synthetic intelligence quite quickly, which is why Amodai is still predicting the next year or two that we are going to be a level of intelligence that we could start to think of as synthetic intelligence. The only limiting factors are, can I get enough chips to do it? And I'm not sure, after you back talk to NVIDIA, you may have to go back and talk nice to them for a while. But can I get enough processing power to do it? And there's the training. And can we train it safely fast enough? And they're already doing that work. So in 6 months, flying under the radar, are they a competitor where we might be looking back and saying, we ignored them the way we did Google? And I don't know. I just think they're a fascinating company and nobody should count them out.
I think that both from the perspective of realistically how I think this is going to happen, but also how I believe it should happen. This whole notion, and this has driven me nuts the entire time that I've been in this industry. It's like the killer app. Did this app just kill that product? Did Apple just destroy Android? Did Android just destroy the iPhone? It's ridiculous. The best thing that we can all hope for is that we have a few big, super competent models that we have access to. That's one thing. Second, that there is still a viable and vibrant community of people that continue to push the limits of open source models of one way or another. The thing that I was describing, the Whisper application, that's built entirely on an open source model, which thank you, OpenAI, for releasing this to the world. But it's built entirely on that. It resides 100% on my PC. You'll be happy to know, John. It doesn't need to go out to the internet to process this stuff.
Thank you, Marcel.
Yeah, you're welcome. To me, this is the best that we can hope for. And not everything has to be something in your own little sandboxed environment. Obviously, there are things that it's important to be able to do that, John. But not everything has to be that.
No.
And I think that a healthy environment for this stuff is a number of companies that are doing great things alongside each other. And I want to see OpenAI be successful and continue to be successful. Ditto for Google's Gemini, ditto for Claude. And I hate to say it, but yes, Grok as well. I want this ecosystem of models, synthetic intelligence that serves different people at different purposes, but also consistently providing good responses and helpful things. And Jim, you were talking about the idea that it should remember these things, this is in some ways the other holy grail of all these things, is despite all the concerns about privacy, despite all the concerns about the AI's training on the conversations that we have with it, most of what happens when a model trains on what you say and do is minimal in the grand scheme of what happens as far as the next iteration of that model. That's thing number one. But the fact is, for all our concerns about this, we want these intelligences to understand us individually, to be able to respond to my needs, Jim, your needs, John, and everybody else out there, understand us at a level that how they deal with us is the way we want to be dealt with on an individual basis. And that's a really tough row to hoe, as the old expression goes, because how do you do that without sacrificing something when it comes to how the model is trained, how much information is kept on you, and so forth? Kudos to a company like Anthropic for trying to navigate that with the constitutional AI and so forth. But it's hard to do, and we all want it. Tell me I'm wrong that you don't want your AIs to understand you.
Which is the next big thing and the next big thing to conquer, which is learning in real time and remembering in real time and knowing when to forget.
Aren't the droids you're looking for?
Yeah. No, but I think that's within this constitution. I think they've got part of the context of that and the technical piece of it. We did a story in this last week where some people are playing with some stuff where you could have 10 million tokens in memory. Won't matter. Why? Because they figured out, break it up, chunk it, store it, and bring it back when you need it. No, there are things that have to happen for that to work. But it is those types of things, the physical part of it are technical challenges that I'm perfectly happy to say we're going to conquer. The ideas of learning, and in order to learn, you have to be able to understand your development cycle. And I think the constitution that Anthropic has put out there, or at least the concepts, and being able to monitor how it works, being able to see how it works, being able to work with it, being able to do this independently is a big part of this. Like I said, they're not a company I'd count out in terms of what happens if OpenAI has its great retail audience and Google has all of its tools and all that sort of stuff. And this little company that is now $1 billion in revenue, they're not dying. Going after corporate revenue makes you a little smarter. They don't have to have all of the processing power of an OpenAI. They've got lots of investors. But what happens when this little company comes up with synthetic intelligence and AGI before everyone else? Oops. That's the amazing thing is, even at my advanced age, I think I'm going to live long enough to see it. And that's
you're only 93.
Jim, let me tell you, as an AI language model myself, let the cat out of the bag.
No, but this is an amazing thing is that we will see in the next couple of years what an advancement. And I think this is the first time I've actually sat back and went, I'm absolutely even more sure that we're going to see an advancement that we can only start to comprehend.
Jim, do I understand that you're suggesting that we're about to walk into a Star Trek universe?
I think we are.
John, live long
and prosper, gentlemen.
And if that's not the most forced segue to an ending I've seen, but a good one. Beam me up, Scotty.
You're welcome.
Once again, we'd like to thank Meter for their support in bringing you this podcast. Meter delivers full stack networking infrastructure, wired, wireless, and cellular to leading enterprises. Working with their partners, Meter designs, deploys, and manages everything required to get performant, reliable, and secure connectivity in a space. They design the hardware, the firmware, build the software, manage deployments, and run support. It's a single, integrated solution that scales from branch offices to warehouses and large campuses to data centers. Book a demo at meter.com/HTT. That's METER.com/HTT.